Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Joseph Capps coming back again with our YouTube channel and our podcast, Dancing with the Darkness. If you're a first-time listener, this is basically a raw, unfiltered account of living with CPTSD. I put my own experiences out there, everything that I've dealt with for 50 years on this earth, all the way from childhood up, how it's formed me, made me, created me. And also, I add my personal journey of faith and how that has given me hope and literally gotten to the point where that's why I'm in this chair and talking to you today. Is that out of anything that we discuss in this podcast, the number one thing I want you to take away is that there's absolutely hope to not only survive with this condition, but you can thrive. You can live a good life. You can turn your pain into purpose. And you can spend that second part of your life, whatever journey you're in, however old you are, it's never too late. Return listeners, I want to thank you so much for your support for the channel. When we get comments and likes and shares, it really, really helps us. If you simply just like it, it helps with this algorithm thing that I don't understand. But anyway, the whole point is your support is really, really appreciated, because all we're trying to do is get this out to as many people as we can. One of the most common things with CPTSD, and I'm speaking from my own personal life, is that we just don't want to go get help. We feel so misunderstood, and so alone, and we're so distrusting that we just won't get help. And eventually, unfortunately, when I call it dancing with the darkness, the connotation is very real, because many of us don't survive this encounter with darkness. And the ones that do, when we finally get to a point to get help, there's been tremendous damage done in our life with relationships and everything else. So if we can put this out there for individuals to get some hope and some healing, and ultimately prevent as much sorrow and pain and agony as we can, that's why we're here. So please do us a favor, like, subscribe, comment. Every little bit tremendously helps the channel. All right, well, now that I've gotten the housekeeping out of the way, we had been talking about attachment these last few videos. And so now I want to kind of jump into some of the ways we've talked about disorganized attachment and anxious and avoidant. And we've touched on secure attachment and what it looks like for us to try to show up in a relationship healthy, and to pick partners that are healthy. And now what I want to do is I want to start looking at the intricacies of how we have shown up, many times in life, some things that are absolutely natural that we do with CPTSD. There are 4 things in general that we do, and I'm going to do the next 4 videos is going to be a series on that. The first one that I really want to touch on, because it's very near and dear to my heart, is oversharing. And I don't know, some of you may be familiar with this topic, some of you may not, but I really want to I'm going to go in depth with oversharing, but not to the point where it's complicated for you to understand. I'm sure that many people that listen to this are going to understand. Maybe you didn't know the right term for it. Maybe you didn't understand what you were doing. But a lot of times this is how we show up when we're trying to forge relationships, friendships, connection, whatever it is. And so I want to talk about, not only how oversharing is detrimental to us, but it's detrimental to the people that we're trying to connect with. I got to be honest with you, it takes a special person to love a person with CPTSD. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Even while we're healing, and even while we are a much healthier person, we still have a lot of tendencies to distrust. We have a lot of tendencies to have fear, anxiety, uncertainty. Sometimes that avoidant attachment can come out. Sometimes the anxious attachment can come out. So I don't want you to think, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and be false with you and make you think that this is this poof moment in your life that you're going to just erase or eradicate all of this. Now, with that being said, there are miracles, and God can do things that no clinician, no medication no therapy can do, and that's what's happened in my life. But that's usually a pinnacle moment, and it's usually a starting point, because we're talking years and years and years of cumulative trauma, developmental trauma, whatever's happened to you. It's going to take some time to iron that out and to heal from it. But I'm not saying this in a negative way. I want you to understand that there's tremendous hope. There's also tremendous validation for you that is on the way with this healing journey, because perhaps the most touching thing that helps us is when we start to see this in other people and we're able to help them. And just the fact that our experiences can alleviate some of the time and stress and pain of others. It's an amazing feeling. And then ultimately, when we can show an individual the kingdom of God, and that there is a Christ, and that there is something bigger than us and bigger than our trauma, and the amazing things that we can do with purpose that are based on our pain, it's an amazing journey. I promise you, it's an amazing journey. There are setbacks. There are moments when I hurt. There are moments when things come back. There's layers to that onion, but God always seems to plug me in, or put me with someone, or put me in a situation where we can validate that and find a way to make it a positive experience. And so I want you to know that that's at store for you. The moment that you decide to take that step to start your healing journey, there can be some amazing things for you for the rest of your life. So oversharing, I'm just going to kind of tell you what that looks like in a very simple way, and then we're going to go into the complexity of it a little bit. I was just thinking about some of my experiences. Basically, we are so desperate to connect. We're so desperate to be liked. We're so desperate to have a nurturing relationship where we're understood, where we're seen, where we're heard, because you really feel like you're just a foreigner in a foreign land and you're all alone with CPTSD. You feel like no one can ever possibly understand not only who you are, but understand what you do and why you do it. And so that's why such a huge part of our podcast and our channel is about education. It's about helping you understand why we do the things that we do, because in order to heal, in order to change, in order to give yourself a break and learn to love yourself, you have to understand that pretty much all of it is not your fault. Okay, we got to get rid of that blame and shame and guilt to be able to move on. And so this is a big component of oversharing, and how we can enter into a relationship at a little bit different pace, at a little bit different level, that is safe for us and safe for the person that we're trying to connect with. So I'm thinking about some of the things in my own experience, and I'm going to kind of make a little bit of a joke out of it to lighten this up a little bit, but it's really not funny if you're the person in there. But I remember probably 20 some years ago was when I really started trying to mature a little bit and understand, why do I do these things? Why am I always anxious? And why do I was just really trying to understand why I was having such a hard time connecting with people. Because I'm a people person. I love people. As a matter of fact, there's kind of a love-hate relationship when you have CPTSD. You love people, but you hate them at the same time. Because of that inner and outer critic that we talked about, especially the outer critic, who is, basically telling you that everybody on the planet is scum and they're going to hurt you. So it's a hell of a battle, because we desperately want the connection. We desperately want the nurturing, the affection, to be seen and heard because we weren't as a child. But at the same time, there's this level of immense fear, because historically, anybody that we've connected with, beginning with our caregivers or our parents, has hurt us, and they've hurt us deeply. Okay, so it's a heck of a situation. It's a conundrum to be in. So I'm just thinking about, the first thing that I did was when I was teaching in church, I was doing different things, I was connecting at that level with individuals. But when I started to open up about myself and my past, the old expression, where there's the shock and awe kind of expression, or the whoa, these expressions that people would give me. I mean, I even remember a couple times that looked like, I had stupefied people. Like they were literally just looking at me like, and I was waiting for drool to like come out of their mouth. Okay. And I didn't understand at the time what I had said or what I had done. And we're going to go into some of the complexities of that towards the end of the video, so that you understand why why I got that reaction. But I even remember going into support groups, and I'm not by any means trying to say that my life and my trauma is worse than anybody else's. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I don't want you to think that that's where we're going with this. But I did personally experience going into actual support groups for trauma, and when it came to the point where you're giving your testimony or you're giving your rendition of what happened, I just got a lot of looks like people just were dumbfounded. And I didn't understand what that was. I didn't understand if there was something wrong with me. Did I say something wrong? I didn't understand the concept of vicarious traumatization and these other things that we're going to talk about at the end. But the point being is that even when I went to places that I thought would be safe, that I thought I could get support, that I thought I could connect, even then, there was an element of oversharing, or there was an element of I've said too much too fast. And so the problem is this is just honestly, it's kind of a cruel set of events that happens, because the whole point in oversharing is that we're trying to connect. Okay, we're trying to be in an environment where we can actually be understood. It's awful. So oversharing can really have a cruel plot twist. Let's just call it that. Okay, so here's why. What happens, like in the situation with those support groups where I couldn't even connect there, you leave there with an even worse sense of loneliness, an even worse sense of shame. You really get to a point where the darkness is really coming in there, and it's basically telling you that you're defective and there's no fixing you. Okay, that you're going to be alone. And so this is very, very hard, because we just want intimacy. We just want connection, and we end up getting more isolation, which is awful. So let's talk about that for a second. So the isolation is actually figurative, because it's not that these individuals don't want to connect with us. It's not that they don't necessarily even not like us. It's the fact that what is coming out of us can be detrimental to them. And this is what we need to understand. Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't some people out there, because I've encountered them. There are people out there that are, and it's a huge population where people are just kind of selfish. And maybe they go into these situations because all they care about is doing for themselves. I need to do for myself. And then when other people kind of bring their stuff in, they're like, yep, can't do anything with that. I don't want anything to do with that, because that's going to interfere with what I want to do. And so you have those of us like myself, like many of you watching this video, that you just want to be seen and heard. You just want to connect. You just want to be part of something. You want someone on this earth to be able to understand who you are at an intimate level. And so the plot twist is that many times, unfortunately, when we decide to be vulnerable, it ends up being a slap in the face, and we end up with more guilt, more shame, and more isolation. And so I want to give you another perspective of this, because part of understanding this is we have to understand that it's not necessarily us that's defective. We need to understand other people and their limitations and what they're capable of consuming as far as trauma. Okay, so there is a concept called vicarious traumatization, and many times when we think about that, we think about it, especially as a first responder or a military person, we think of that as you hearing or being exposed to someone else's traumatic experience, and it affects you morally, like a moral wound. Okay, so most of us, if we're human and we have a soul, we're very sensitive to anything that's innocent. So children, animals, things of that nature, when they're harmed, it's a moral wound. It's an injustice. It's just not right. It's just morally wrong down to our core. And so if we're exposed to somebody that maybe is a police officer or a fireman or an EMT or even military, and they start to talk about these things in graphic detail, we can become vicariously traumatized, because just what we're consuming verbally can get in our heads, and it can affect us deeply. Okay, and so sometimes when we overshare, it actually becomes something else. Okay, and I want to distinguish the difference here. Sometimes oversharing can be called trauma dumping. That's what we call it. And here's the difference. Okay, trauma dumping is when you are unloading your rucksack. You are a pressure cooker, and it's like a teapot. It's screaming. The pressure has to be released, and you just start unloading. Okay, you feel the slightest connection with someone, and you just start throwing it all out there, all your personal stuff, all the stuff you're going through, because you're desperate not only to connect, but you're desperate to get some of this out of there. Okay, so this is the difference. We can share in a way that we can slowly release the pressure valve, or we can trauma dump. Okay, and so oversharing can become a trauma dump, and we got to look at the other person's perspective. If you're that other person, you may even be a kind person, and you think, hey, this is a really nice person, and you want to connect with them. But then they start telling you all of these things, and it's overwhelming. Okay, now if this is a person that's compassionate or is empathic, it can be really overwhelming for them, because as an empath myself, what happens is we take all of that on, and it can become too much. It can be overload. Okay, and so what I want to teach you today is how to share things and how to connect, and how to do it in stages and in levels. Okay, because you need to feel out the other person, and you need to see what they're capable of tolerating. Okay, and you need to understand that you're gonna have to do some sort of therapy. I know the T word sucks. I wanted to do it all myself. I didn't trust anybody either, but there has to be a safe environment for you to be able to trauma dump. Okay, it's essential. When we look at acute stress versus PTSD, the difference is if the people with acute stress were able to do some trauma dumping, then PTSD would have never even developed. Okay, so this is how critical this is that we need to be able to get some of this stuff out and process it, so that it doesn't compartmentalize or get recessed into our brain and affect other things. Okay, and so this is why it's so important. I know most of you don't want to hear the T word, the therapy word, because you don't think anyone's going to be able to help you. But if you're very, very careful and you're meticulous in your search, there are individuals just like myself that are out there that not only can offer you some really good therapeutic intervention, but they can intimately understand where you're coming from, which is huge. If I would not have been able to find some individuals in my life that had CPTSD and understood what I'm going through, and with God's help, you know what? I understand. I would have never taken the steps towards healing. So this is what we need to understand. And just as a side note, I think those two things are comorbid with each other. I think that God is the one that puts those individuals on our path, simply because of how I've evolved. My CPTSD journey has evolved into me literally being called deep within my soul to put this out there to help other people. And so I feel that the people that came into my life were the same. I feel that they were desperate to turn their pain into purpose, and I was one of those people that they reached, and here I am today. And that's how this works. It's like a ripple effect. When you throw the pebble in the water, It's the same whether it's light or dark. If it's dark, the trauma continues and it goes on for generations. And we see that with developmental trauma and family curses and abuse that never stops. But we can also throw a pebble in the water as a healing person, and that can spread generationally. And so that's what I want you to think about, is sometimes we don't see the big picture here. Okay, so be meticulous in your search. And I'll tell you what, I'm putting myself out there not only to help you myself, but also if you're from Albuquerque or Europe or wherever you're from and you're listening to this, I will do what I can. If you say to me in a text or in an email that you're ready to get help, I'll do my best to help you find somebody in your area. I'm that's a promise I'll give you, because I want people to have a chance to heal. And if you need help vetting someone, or getting help finding someone, then I will be more than happy to do what I can to try to help assimilate you to that person, because my purpose is much higher than myself. I just want to help people. That is my reward. And as you start doing the same thing, you will realize that that is your reward too, that's your affirmation and validation. So this oversharing can turn into trauma dumping. And so I just want you to understand how that works, so that it's very, very simple for you. When you're making a connection with somebody, when you're first meeting with somebody, I want you to think of tit for tat or quid pro quo, which is not something we want to look at in an intimate relationship once we get to that level. But in the beginning, you need to be able to feel people out. And as they share, you can share. And as they share, you can share. Okay? And that's how we build that level of the relationship. Whether it's an intimate friendship, an intimate relationship, a loving relationship, marital relationship, whatever. You need to be tit for tat in the beginning. And that way we can determine, how much can I share? How much is appropriate? But at the same time, most likely you're an empathic person like I am. This is a quality that comes with CPTSD, is that we're highly sensitive to people, and a lot of us become empathic, which I believe is a gift from God, but we see a very high instance of people becoming very compassionate and empathic people. And so at the same time that you are sharing, you also can show that other person that you care about what they're sharing. So you see how that tit for tat is going. They're unloading a little bit, and they're gaining trust for you because they see that you care, which makes it easier for you to unload a little bit on them, which is going to give the two of you a sense of knowing each other, a sense of camaraderie. It can build a bond, and you just go at levels. And a lot of times you can develop some amazing relationships with individuals because it gets to a point where your relationship is that strong, your friendship, whatever it is, that they know and you know that when something happens, this is a lifeline, right? You can text them, call them, whatever, and you know that they can handle what you're going to say, and you also know that they're going to have the words that you need to regulate you. Okay, so we can have some great relationships. We have to avoid the oversharing and the trauma dump, because if this person, which 90% of the population plus has had some sort of trauma in their life, some more than others, if we come right at them with everything, it's going to be overwhelming. And one of our defense mechanisms, we've talked about the avoidant attachment, is we got to get away from that. It's too much. Okay. And so the person that gets rejected, it can become very, very personal. Okay. And I just want to throw out a quick note for men in particular. If you're a man watching this with CPTSD, we need to understand that one of the most important thing to men is for our feelings to matter. Society has taught us they don't. Feminism has taught us that they don't. But this is the number one source of men taking their lives, is a lack of connection and a lack of understanding from other individuals, a lack of being able to feel. At a biological chemical level, there is not much at all that separates us biologically from female to male. Okay? God created us both. We're very, very similar. We are different, but we're very similar. And one of those things is we all have the same hormones that create emotions. We're both emotional beings. That doesn't make you weak, okay? So for the men out there listening to this, I want you to be conscious of that your feelings do matter, they are important, and to try not to personalize that so much when people reject those emotions. That is not a defect in you, it's a defect in those around you. And I just had to throw that out there because that's been a horrific battle for me my entire life. It has evolved from being a very sick person to becoming a very healthy person. And through the whole process, I have felt that my feelings and emotions have not mattered, especially with the people that were supposed to be very close to me. So I'm not telling you anything that I haven't experienced or had to battle with myself. But I can also attest to you that there is hope. And as we learn to share at a slower pace, we can end up having some of the most amazing relationships ever. To go on from the story about the support groups, later on in life, I got to a point where I was actually leading these support groups. I did it for a good 10 years and was able to structure the group that way to make it to where people could share like this. And I'm here to tell you that people from all walks of life, all different vocations, they all had one thing in common, and that's trauma. And if we do this the right way, all of these individuals have become like family to one another, and they still are like family to one another. This is, 10 years later, and these individuals are still very, very close. So you can forge some amazing relationships, and these relationships are so critical and so important when it comes to CPTSD, because as our podcast name connotates, Dancing with the Darkness is a real thing that we have to do every day. And it's not just in the natural sense, it's in the supernatural sense, okay? Because the more we heal, the more of an impact we're going to have on the world in a positive way. And if you believe in good, you have to believe in evil. And that's what Dancing with the Darkness is that we're also going to have some spiritual warfare that eventually we'll start doing some videos on, because there's a supernatural part of this too that ties right into your mental health. But not today. But I want you to understand that that's part of it as well, is that as you heal, you're going to have a greater impact on the world, okay? Because people are hurting out there. People are taking their own lives. People are suffering. And so the more of an impact we have in the world to alleviate that suffering, and also to bring people to the loving grace of Christ, the more we're going to be attacked. And so I hope you understand today, the difference between sharing, oversharing, and trauma dumping, because this is extremely common for us when we try to make connections. And so I want you to understand that you can absolutely still make connections. We just have to figure out a way to do it a little bit slower and look for the other person's cues and how they share, and we can do it like a ladder. And please don't discount the fact that it is tremendously, immensely healing for you to just be able to go to a safe environment and to just get it all out, okay? Because as you get it out, it's less of a load on you, it's less of a load on your nervous system, and it's going to improve everything. It's going to help your cognitive part of yourself, it's going to help your physical part of yourself. We have to purge some of this stuff out and get it out. And if you go to a safe environment with a trained therapist, it's going to be safe. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to, freak out. They're going to be able to, listen to what you have to say and learn, help you learn how to start processing that. Okay. So please don't discount that. There's some wonderful people out here that I believe God has put on this earth that are here just for that purpose, to help individuals like us. And then we, in turn, can go on to help others. Hope you have a wonderful day. I hope that this video spoke to you. I really hope that you learned even something small, so that you can start having some hope and understanding that this is a common thing. You're not abnormal. This is what happens with CPTSD, and we just have to learn how to share in an effective way. We have to learn how to process in an effective way. And at the end of that, we can have some amazing, amazing real relationships that are deep and purposeful and tremendously healing. Till next time, this is Dr. Capps signing off, Dancing with the Darkness. Thank you for your support. God bless. Until next time.